looking for healthier, fuller hair? Do you want extra money for bills, trips, extracurricular activities for your kids, or do you want to replace your entire income? Monat is the answer. Our products are Leaping Bunny certified, vegan, and Monat can be used by anyone, including your kids and pets. Message me on my Instagram to partner with me. Founder shares are available, and as a market partner, you have access to uncapped bonuses, 45% commission, 35 to 55% off discounts, on top of all-inclusive paid trips. Right now, I also have a free gift for anyone that partners with me, so don't miss out. You can message me on my Instagram at LizChilvers87.
We still do 7 NUFC Matters show a week for free. But if you want to help support NUFC Matters, then there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast and video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications bell so you don't miss a single show. If you want to help us financially, then you can join the channel using this button with the membership starting at $1.99 a month. Or you can drop us a donation in the chat using a super sticker. We're also looking for sponsors. If you'd like your brand advertised on the flyers for the show and featured during the ad break, then email john@nufcmatters.com to arrange today.
The word, switch the bracelet on the word, switch the bracelet on the word, switch the bracelet on the word.
Good evening. You will get sick of that, the word, on Blake 7. It is a big welcome to Nick and to Lynn. How are you?
Very good, thanks. How are you?
Very good. This is the start of a new Blake 7 podcast, something which I was hoping to do many years ago, never got around to it. And it wasn't until I went to my very first Blake 7 convention that I thought, I finally met the two people I think who can help make this a big success. So that's why I've got Nick and Lynn here. Thanks for joining us on this journey. And I think the first thing I want to do is just tell people a little bit about what Blake 7 is. And there's probably no better place to start than the Blake 7 program guide, which is now signed by a few people for me, which is quite rare. But the prologue gives anybody who doesn't know what Blake 7 is enough information. Between January 1978 and December 1981, the BBC broadcast 52 episodes of Blake 7. The final episode was seen by over 10 million people, a figure which, although stunning in itself, is made all the more remarkable by the fact that it was achieved despite the programme being broadcast at the same time as top ITV audience catcher Coronation Street. It grabbed the public imagination in a way that only a handful of programmes have ever done before, and letters poured in, including one from me, and I'm sure you guys as well, to the BBC when they finally killed it off in 1981. It's science fiction. You'll learn all about it as you watch these episodes. But today I wanted to kick the podcast off by introducing Lynn and Nick and to find out a little bit about why they like Blake 7. But I think it's probably best to say how we all met. And a picture tells 1,000 tales.
Yeah.
We were called by the Federation, weren't we?
We were.
So this is a convention, Nick, and Lynn. I'll start with you, Nick. What a day that was. Really, honestly, I had such a fantastic time. I went back to being a child again, and so many people there for a good cause. First of all, in a sleepy little village, in a village hall. But what a day, Nick! Amazing times. And you've been to these before.
I'd been to this, I've been to a few conventions, not loads, but I've been to a few, and I'd been to this particular one the last time it was held, which was 2 years ago, I think it was. fact, I think it was 2 years today. In fact, I saw a Facebook memory quote. So I'd gone in 2022, and I just had a great time. I met Stephen Greif there, who was Travis, who's sadly he passed away not long after that. Actually, it was only a few months later. I had a great time. I really enjoyed it. I met Eric and Ian, who do the Blake 7 character podcast. Who that's how I met Lynn. There you go.
There they are.
I met Lynn the night before the convention because we went for a meal with Eric and Ian. Had a natter with them, and then I met you in the queue waiting to go in.
Fantastic. It was fantastic. And Lynn, you were there as well. It was, we just gelled together, didn't we? I think I just came and sat next to you guys, and then we hit it off and spent a lovely afternoon together.
Yes, absolutely. I thought it was great. It was the same, like you, that was my first convention as well. So a meeting, you're right, Nick, meeting you and Eric and Ian the night before was one of the things that made sure that I went on Sunday morning and didn't bottle out, which would have been the worst thing. No, it was excellent. It was just picking that as my first one. I don't think I could have bettered. And getting that little intro the night before, it was excellent. It was just, as you said, childhood stuff all over again. I totally loved it.
Yeah, it was. And just to give you a little bit of a feel of it, there was some amazing stuff. I mean, Matt Irvin was there, who had designed a lot of the spaceships and weaponry, and of course the original teleport console. If you see that on the bottom right hand side there, that's the only remaining part of the teleport console that's left. There's Matt in the top left there. He was I felt he was like the star of the show on the day. He had some great stories, obviously very used to doing these kind of things, and obviously had the 2 hairdryers along with him as well, which we'll learn more about in other episodes, I guess.
Yeah, that'll mean nothing to some people, but
people will be thinking, why is Steve really talking about a hairdryer? There was also some wonderful guests there. Sometimes getting photographs of these things is difficult. I did do my best, and I did manage to get a couple of really good ones. One was, of course, who was Jenna, Stephen Pacey, of course, Tarrant. It was a great day for that, and they all. If you've never been to a convention before, then people queue up to get things signed, and I guess it's just how you ask for a photo. If you can get a photograph, it's great. If you can't, you can't. I think for me, the star of the show was June Hudson, and I spent about 15 minutes talking to June, and a lot of costumes, wasn't it, Nick, on show at the convention?
Oh, yeah. And I think the sad thing and the sort of quite traumatic thing behind the scenes was the chap that owned a lot of those costumes had sadly passed away literally about a week before the event was due to happen. So
I think most of these were Gary's, weren't they? Those were his, and it was you could tell that the rest of the people organising it, the team were. I think they did amazingly well to carry on that day. I know it's. It's easy to say, Gary. Sorry, I was going to say it's easy to say that Gary would have wanted it to happen. It's another thing to then execute on that, right? And to go out there and still organise and talk to people and be there.
And just to still be up for doing it when you're caught in that moment of grief, etc. I think obviously they were thrown into a position where, an option was just to call the whole thing off. But like you say, his wish would have been for it to carry on. So they did, and they did a really good job.
Yeah, the show must go on, as they say. And there was some wonderful costumes there as well. This was probably one of my favorite moments, actually, because there's lots of people walking around in cosplay, lots of people walking around dressed as certain characters. One person who changed from one costume to another halfway through the day, which was brilliant. But this was great, wasn't it? This was just some people might look at that and say, "Oh, what on earth are grown people doing that for?" But it was great. That's what makes the day for me. I mean, the Federation, the Federation guards were fantastic, but there was a lot of effort went into that, wasn't there, Lynn?
Yes, I think a lot of people, as you say, a lot of people celebrating what they love with other people who are in exactly, who were able to share that. I think it is, I think it's very special. And you say some people will laugh. And they said, "What are you doing?" I thought it was excellent. I thought all of those costumes were wonderful and varied. And just that sums up the day. That is a great photograph.
Yeah, it was fun. It was fantastic. And there was one of the guys, I think, wasn't he? He changed from what he did. Was it 2 versions of Blake he did on the day? He did.
Yeah, I think you're right there.
He did Blake.
Tarrant.
Tarrant,
the brown.
that's it,
it was the kind of brown and cream Tarrant one that I think he did later.
Yeah,
because I hadn't seen it until that picture.
I think Ian had 2 or 3 different costumes on as well, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
Had 3. Yeah, he had 3. He had a Blake. He had a Blake, if that makes sense. To you and
yeah, it was fun.
As well as his Travis Mark too.
It was fantastic. The one person who, again, I mean, June was fantastic from behind the scenes, but Sasha Mitchell was fantastic as well. And I loved her reaction. When she got out, we managed to get out there. We were out there getting our photographs taken just after Sasha came out. But it was quite interesting to hear that she got a lot of hate. Without any spoilers to what her part in Blake 7 was, and it was quite a minor one, but a major one as far as the storyline was concerned. She got a lot of hate for it, didn't she, Nick?
Yeah, I was quite stunned by that, really. But yeah, and I was also equally stunned by the fact that she was a lot younger than she looks when she started in it.
Yeah.
And for then, a girl of that age to be subjected to all that abuse afterwards is a bit sad and shocking, really. But I suppose she wants to be thankful it wasn't broadcast in the modern day when social media's there. It'd have been an absolute pile-on, wouldn't it? As opposed to just people writing letters or whatever they did. But it would have been considerably worse in modern times for her. But,
yeah, she was lovely, Lynn, wasn't she? She was, she gave a good account of herself, I think, when she was speaking on stage.
Yeah, she was really good. Yeah, she was confident, and I think she really enjoyed herself by the looks of things.
Yeah, she definitely did. Okay, one last thing before we move on from the convention and get into some questions about Blake 7 to you guys is there was an auction. It was for charity. Lynn, you won a particular auction, didn't you?
Oh, I did. I sat firmly on my hands for the whole of that auction, thinking, not that I don't need, that's silly, but I mustn't, I'm not going to get carried away. I'm just going to enjoy watching it, saw other people doing it. And it came to that last lot. And even partway through that, I can't let this one go. Yes, I have the privilege of being able to spend an hour or 2 with Jan Chappell over drinks in a club in London. And I cannot wait. It was I thought that is, I could get a thing, but what's going to match that? So, and we are booked for a couple of weeks' time. So I'm very much looking forward to it and coming back and telling you guys about it. Although I have promised Eric and Ian an exclusive, but we can share after that.
Yeah, that's great.
Delighted.
Fantastic. No, well, enjoy it. It's great. It was all for a great cause, and that's fantastic. Look forward to hearing about your trip to meet Jan. Should be great. Okay,
just in London, Lynn.
Sorry, it's going to be in London. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so all organised. I say I can't quite. I've got it in the diary. Drinks with Jan Chappell, like you do. So,
brilliant. Great stuff. Who would have thought all those years ago when you first got into Blake 7, you'd be going out for lunch with Callie? That's fantastic.
Yeah, no, didn't go there at that time. Fantastic.
Okay, just for fun for this episode, as a little bit of an introduction into all of us. I will go last, so I will ask the questions and then give my answers after you guys. So, first memories of Blake 7, Lynn. I'll come to you on that one. What's your first memories of Blake 7?
So it does start with the way back, the first episode, and I was into science fiction anyway. From then, I was 10 when that came out, but I was already science fiction. My dad enjoyed it, my sister and my mother not so much. But we saw this was on, and I watched the way back, at that set, and it was, as we know, quite unlike any of the rest of the episodes that we ever watched, but it still drew me in. Weirdly, I then missed the second episode. Couldn't catch it up. They weren't doing repeats. But once I got back into the third one and onwards, then it was that was it for me. But I remember watching The Way Back, and I remember it being different and intriguing, and I wanted to see more. So yeah, those are my first memories.
Okay, same question to you, Nick. First memories of Blake Seven.
Well, my first memory of Blake Seven actually predates The Way Back, because I remember because that would have been broadcast in January 78, I think it was. And I remember in late 77, there being an advertisement on the BBC of upcoming programmes, and they showed some clips of it. And I was already a big Doctor Who fan, and still am. And this just looked along the same sort of genre, but a little bit more gritty, shall we say, for want of a better term. And I just thought, oh, right, I want to watch that, make a note of watching that. And I did, and I was hooked straight away and stuck with it.
Yeah, same for me. The Way Back was my introduction. I remember watching the first episode, and pretty similar, really unique. I mean, I liked Doctor Who. I loved science fiction. Some of the Doctor Who was actually too scary for me as a kid. And I mean, when you look back at the monsters now, you think, how on earth was I scared of that? The Daleks, I think most people were scared of the Daleks. But when I look at some of the other monsters that I was terrified in the era of Tom Baker, I do laugh. But that was my first memories, and I just remember how. And I've watched the episode back so many times, and we'll be reviewing that on the next show. But it was very, very dark. To see this kind of world where everyone seemed to be controlled, and this guy seemed to be very confused. And I was, what is this about? It was something that made you think. And you got to bear in mind. I mean, for me, I was only. It was one of the first programs I got into. I was only coming up to my 7th birthday when Blake 7 came out. So it's very, very young to watch something as dark as that. But my dad was into Star Trek and Doctor Who, so it was obvious that was going to be on. And with it being on at the time before my bedtime in those days, it was great to catch up, to catch it. And it became, along with the Jam pop group, it became the two things that I got into at that age. Not bad to go through, Blake 7 and the Jam at the same time. The only disappointment is that in 1981, the Blake 7 disappeared, and in 1982, the Jam disappeared.
Yeah, around that, yeah.
So I went through double trauma in that period. But yeah, The Way Back was, that was my first introduction as well. So no surprise. So, okay, let's talk characters then. So obviously we can go through the full series 1, 2, 3, 4, or A, B, C, D. I know there's a lot of contention out there as to what it is and how you say it. But first, favourite character. Nick, give you the opportunity to give us your favourite character.
Well, it's nip and tuck between two of them. I would say it's either Avon or Villa. Avon's obviously the sort of cold, calculating computer expert. There he is. Who becomes centre stage in the show as it goes on. And Villa is the sort of seemingly cowardly, one might call a drunk, who's got a terrific sense of humour, and a lot of the best lines in the whole show fall to these two guys, either in sarcastic comebacks or general witticisms. And if I had to pick one over the other, I think I'd probably go with Villa, but very close.
Yeah, they became the stars of the show, didn't they? Lynn, over to you. Your favourite character?
Yeah, they did become the stars. I think you're right. Plus one more. And I think at the time I was watching it, and as you said, overall now it's Avon. I ended up effectively doing computer science, doing all that kind of stuff. And so already even, and, you know, at that age, that was something I identified with, but he was really cool and in charge, although not. And as you say, the sarcastic element, all of those I loved. As I've watched back, I know we'll get on to talking about that, but as you watch again and you watch later, how awesome is Servalan? I mean, really, it's an astonishing role and it grows. So, but at the time when I was watching it, it was Avon, and those lines, I agree with you, Nick, the lines that Boucher wrote between the two of those, between him and Villa, yeah, they make it. An awful lot of it, they make it for me.
Yeah, I would agree. It's no surprise for me. It is Avon for me. He was the star of the show. I did love Blake at the start, but Avon very quickly, as you'll find out as we'll review each episode, becomes, you know, the main protagonist in the show, and it's the lines that he gets. Script writers clearly wrote for Paul Darrow because of the way that he could deliver. Two great actors, Gareth Thomas and Paul Darrow. Two great actors. Gareth was well established on stage, came to screen, and then, you know, obviously wanted to get back to stage before his reputation was left in tatters, I think. But Paul Darrow was equally as good, and if not better. And I just love the way that, as you'll find out again through the four series, how his character changes, the journey that he goes on, the character dimensions that he's got, the relationship that he had with Villa, the relationship that he had with women, other members of the crew. He's just so many different angles and depths to Paul Darrow's interpretation of Avon that you know. It's a case of will the real Avon stand up? But he definitely made an impression on me, and to the point, and I discussed this with you when I first met you guys, that's why I became an actor. That's why I wanted to become an actor, and you know, I loved Paul Darrow's interpretation, and you know, I'm lucky enough to write to him, get a reply from him, and his good lady at the time, and you know, encouraging me to crack on. I haven't reached the heights of Paul, but I've achieved my aim, and yeah. But as a character, Avon 100% was my favourite as well. So no great surprises there, I don't think. But Servalan, great shout. I think if I had to pick a villain, I think it would be Servalan. And again, script writers, Lynn, wrote for Jacqueline, didn't they?
They did, and again they grew into that, and that's another character that evolved significantly. When you think, again, no details at the moment, but when you think about when you first meet that character, how it was positioned, where it was, and then through the other series, there's an evolution there. But and I don't think we've seen since that many villains like that, and particularly female characters not drawn in that way. And given that started in 1978, it's quite astonishing, frankly. You certainly didn't get anything for a good long while after that.
That's a good link to my next question. 1978. Watching it back now, do you think it's aged well, Nick? I'll come to you first on that. Has Blake 7 aged well? It's difficult because you would have probably had to watch them all fairly recently, but you know,
I would say to some degree yes, and to some degree no. I think the earlier, obviously, because it's science fiction and it's limited by a BBC budget, being produced in the late 70s, going into early 80s, the money wasn't there, so it was never going to be like a Battlestar Galactica that, you know, was produced in America and had all the money to throw at it. So some of the special effects were less than one would hope for. And I think it suffered a little bit from the last season, whether you want to call it season 4 or D or however you prefer it. It suffered a little bit from sort of 1980s tastic costumes, which I think look a bit jarring when you watch them again now. But I think the plots of certainly the first 3 seasons in particular, and again, I would say for me, seasons 1 and 2 are the best. The plots of the stories are great. So if you think of it just as plots, yeah, it's aged really well. again, if you look at it from a modern perspective in terms of special effects, etc., yeah, it's lacking, but that's just because of the times it was made and the budget it was made on.
Same question to you, Lynn. Has it aged well?
Yeah, and a similar answer. I mean, I think that, yeah, the plots and the character development and the character interaction, I think, stands up really well. A lot of it's smart. It's smart. It's funny. It works. Yeah, we'll put the special effects aside, as you say. I mean, it did come out at the same time as Star Wars, but everyone knew that Star Wars was, if I can get, light years ahead in that type of way. And it didn't. It has. There are some elements that have not aged well in terms of behaviors. Treatment of women. Just generally, the sorts of, some of the themes have not aged, but overall, not as much as you might think. So overall, I'm happy. I think it's staged pretty well. You can pick out some problematic episodes, and we will get to them, and there'll be plenty to talk about there. But on balance, I think it's aged well. We've all grown, aged with it, so we're maybe. It's interesting to know whether we're the best people to talk. But how can you put a modern audience, a young audience in front of it now, and expect to get the same reaction we had? So it's a slightly complex thing. I think it's I'm happy. I can watch it again, and I don't, I'm not embarrassed. I don't kind of cringe. I don't switch off in terms of, I'm not disappointed rewatching it. I never have been.
Yeah, I did try to get me daughters to watch Blake 7, but it didn't go down well, I'm afraid. Has it aged well? I think it has. I agree wholeheartedly with both of you. I think it has. It's so weird to watch a program as a youngster and then to go back and watch it as an adult. And I think I love the fact that I've been able to do that, because you get a completely different perspective. I watched it for the second time in full on a treadmill in the gym, and I basically went in to do cardio for an hour each morning, and somebody had kindly loaded all 52 episodes onto YouTube, which was now available on the treadmill. So I basically watched Blake 7 on a treadmill. Maybe not the best place to watch it for viewing it, and not quite the same as your screen in the living room, but it was great. I really enjoyed, and it was. I watched, and since I watched it again, of course, on DVD in the house, and then. Pretty much like one of my favorite films, Jaws. If ever I see it, if it creeps up on a TV channel, or if it suddenly finds itself on the YouTube feed on TV, I end up sticking an episode on. So it has aged well, but there is those issues, as you say, which we'll get to when we do the each episode review, where nowadays things could be easily taken as homophobic. They could be taken as misogynist, it could be, there could be a whole host of issues, but it's television from the 1970s and early 80s, and that's unfortunately the way it was back then. But we will discuss it, as you said. So overall consensus, I think we'll all think that it's aged well, which is great. Next question. We've talked about favorite characters. There's been some computers in Blake 7. Again, we will come to all of them, and we will probably hear from them in different ways. We've got Aura.
Hi.
Yeah, we've got Seth.
Confirmed.
And we've got Slave as well. But which one was your favourite, Lynn? Which computer was your favourite in Blake 7?
Zen. I thought about this. It's just thinking it through. It's Zen, maybe because it was the first that you see, the first you experience, and maybe because it certainly didn't look or behave like any computer we'd seen before in any series. I think of we're sort of lacking in Doctor Who. It's interesting, up to this point, a computer in that sense wasn't a thing. So I'm thinking Star Trek, that type of, okay, so we'll put Star Wars aside for now, but there was nothing like this, and to have this big, as you say, this big screen, this big presence, I was in awe, I thought, and it continued through, and quite traumatized at some points. Therefore, definitely my favorite. I think the others have their moments, but that's the one I remember.
Okay, Nick, favorite computer.
I would have said Aurak myself. I did I liked Zen. I thought it was cool. Slave less so. But Aurak was the top of the pile for me. I think barring the sort of change of voice that he gets after, I think it's after his introduction. He's so manipulative and sharp-witted and rude, and he's just got so much going for him. I say him. It has a male voice, I guess, but it's an inanimate object. But yeah, he just he stole the show, I thought, for me.
Yeah,
from a computer perspective, anyway.
Yeah, from a computer perspective, there's no doubt about that. Yeah, it's a tough one for me. Aurak just pips Slave for me. I wasn't a Zen fan. I did like him, but I thought Aurak and Slave had more character, and I love, as we'll see, almost the conversations between Aurak and Slave in Series D were superb. I thought there was a little bit of comedy there between computers, was only ever seen with C-3PO and R2-D2 in Star Wars. So I just thought it was quite a unique experience, and there's a superior and an inferior computer, and one of them has the last laugh kind of thing in each episode. It was almost like a Villa and Avon situation at times. I can understand, I've seen people criticize the name Slave, and again, I can understand why people would, but really, I just thought it was just something a bit different. That had to have something different with what happens and what brings Slave to the screen. So yeah, for me, I will go with Aurak as my favorite computer. But if you're going with design, I think Aurak looks the part. Although Slave did have a few. He had an interesting look, didn't he? He had an interesting look about him, and the way that he moved, etc., was quite good. I'd love to know how much it cost to build Slave.
Yeah, I never warmed, I have to say. I was about to immediately, my response was about £2.50, but that's unfair, I think, because there was more to it than you think.
Yeah, it's a question for Matt Urban. It's a question for Matt Urban, maybe the next time. How much does it cost to make Slave?
Yes.
Not a fortune, I think, is the answer.
Not a fortune, yeah. That was his answer to most things. Okay, so easier one, I guess. Liberator or Scorpio, which, as you will find out if you're new to Blake 7, are the two ships that our gallant heroes have under their stewardship in episodes. Lynn, give you first option on this one.
It's not really a question for me. It's the Liberator. It's the best spaceship ever. The design is astonishing. I still think it's still somewhat awe-inspiring for me. Even seeing, when you see the models and so, that just makes it better. I think it looks different to any spaceship I'd ever seen. When you see the bridge, it's big, it's grand. The way in which it's found, the way in which we learn about it, I think again is different, is mysterious. It works. I love it.
Okay, one vote for the Liberator, Nick.
I'm with Lynn on that one. It's not even a contest, really. The Liberator was great. It was bigger, faster, more advanced than any other thing that they'd ever come across, and anything that they do come across, really. So yeah, it's no contest, that one.
Yeah, no contest either. It's a hat trick for the Liberator for me. I've even got me Liberator t-shirt on tonight. Yeah, it's got to be. I mean, it's a fascinating concept to have a ship like that. you know, when you think back to the great spaceships, the Enterprise on Star Trek, it always reminded me similar to that, except they went for the big, the big dome at the front, and it was. I don't think they stole the design from that. It was maybe influenced by that, just something a bit different. And the fact that this was a much sought after space vehicle, and I always hoped that there was going to be others in the fleet. That there was going to be others in the fleet very similar to it. There was going to be other spaceships like it, and just beautiful. And I never even give it a thought about the inside of it. The inside, the design, and excellent. Which with Zen as well as the computer, just fantastic, great stuff. Yeah, and it's from an imagination to come up with something like that was fantastic. I must show the Scorpio, even though we haven't praised it at all. The Scorpio, of course, which only comes into play in Series D. Interesting because it does land. It can land, and our heroes basically acquire that towards the end of the run. But it wasn't, as you can see, it wasn't anything special to Scorpio. Be interesting to see when we get under that whether people agree. If you've got any comments to make, leave it in the comments below in the video, and we'll read them out onto the next show. So next one's harder, and it is, again, without spoilers, if you can. What is your favorite episode? Lynn, we'll come to you.
We have to pick one. So Nick's partly heard this before. If it's got to be one, then it's Rumours of Death. Mm-hmm. Season 3 or C is the one I don't know. It's a timing thing. That it's overall it has the most number of episodes I will rewatch and kind of look for as a series, and that one stands out for me. There are others you could probably pick from each series and so on, but one episode, it's Rumours of Death. I think again that the favorite character, it's Avon at the center. It's Avon at some of his most Avon-like, and yet in some ways an Avon we haven't seen before, and aspects of him we hadn't seen before, aspects of Servalan we haven't seen before, going back to Earth, as you say, spoiler free, but that happens pretty early on. Love it. So back to Earth in a different kind of way. The dialogue, some of the dialogue and the interplay is great. It has some of the last exchange, again, is one of the finest sets of dialogue for me. It wins. I used to, probably like quite a few people, I recorded the audio, on a cassette player from the television for a couple of series, and I would listen to them over and over again. So I can pretty much recite this one from start to finish.
And we discussed that, didn't we, when we first met, because that was the same episode. It's one of the surviving episodes. I've got an audio tape. I did exactly the same with that particular episode. That and Blake, which of course is the final episode in Series D. I can do more as both of those. We'll have to have one night where we do them, where we get the next. We'll volunteer our services at the next charity convention and get on stage and do the
voiceover.
Fantastic. And I think Ian can be walking around doing the acting in his costumes.
Perfect.
Get you involved, Nick, as well.
Love it.
Nick, what about you? Your favorite episode?
I was asked this same question when we were at the event in Stevenson, and it was a little bit on the spot, and I was like, oh my god, I had to rack my brains straight away and rifle through 52 episodes in your head. And I said Star One at the time, which I do like, and it is a cracking episode. But having had a little bit more time to think about it, I watched it this morning in preparation for this. I like Cyclocate Destroy. Because it introduces both Servalan and Travis, who's set on a mission to hunt down Blake. There he is, from that very episode. And the Space Command headquarters, there's a couple of other characters in there who are meeting Servalan who I thought were superb. And it's just I just think it's a cracking episode. I like the fact that they're going again. It's a childhood memory that they go to raid a security headquarters on the planet Kentaro, and they're using Fulham Gasworks as the actual setting. But just that setting there, which is so utterly British looking, is this headquarters up in an imaginary planet. But it just captured my imagination. It's just an image that stuck with me from being, whatever I was, 11, 12 years of age when I first saw it to now. And I really like that episode.
Yeah, and again, because we talked about it at the convention, I mean, you brought The Rumours of Death is my favourite episode as well. And I think it's because what I talked about Paul Darrow and his interpretation of Avon, I think this was like his crowning moment. He'd had a few previous ones where he'd had some great dialogue, but this, what an episode this was. And again, without spoilers, it was that series was driven towards relationships. When you look at it, certainly didn't pick that up as a 9-year-old, 10-year-old, but when I watched it back as an adult, it's that series 3 is about relationships between the crew and various people, whether it's the crew and the crew, whether it's the crew and people from the past. And it's also very transitional because, we do have the introduction of new characters. We have the introduction of the wonderful Josette Simon as Dana, and of course Stephen Pacey as Tarrant. So I guess as well it was that kind of transitional series. But the removal of one villain and the increase in the change in another villain, and it's just amazing. Series 3 is very special. When I was younger, Series 4 was my favourite, with the exception of the final episode for obvious reasons. But Series 3, I think is definitely my favourite as well, and Rumours of Death is in that. So no great surprise. And I think having listened to a lot of the other podcasts, I think a lot of us are all in agreement. That is probably one of the standout episodes. It's certainly in a lot of people's in a lot of people's top 5. If I had to pick one from Series 4, it would be Orbit, because that really just again is Paul Darrow at his best. And that wonderful relationship that we've just all discussed about, Avon and Villa is tested. It's tested to the very end of that episode, and the dimensions of those two characters and the acting in that is just superb. So, and I know Series D isn't what people like, but I just thought that was brilliant. And the wonderful John Savardant, who plays Glorian in that, is it's just something special. But it's a pity we've got to wait until Series D to go through that, because that really is one of my favourites. He's such a slimy character in that.
Yeah, he is exactly that. Yeah,
it was an extraordinary performance. You're right. It was very, but and I totally agree with you about the character piece for Avon and Villa in that one. It was a tough and an amazing watch. I think
some very good acting by Michael Keating as well in that one.
Oh God, yes. I mean, yes, you were there with him, weren't you?
Yeah.
Just completely.
Yeah, definitely. And we'll send our best to Michael. I picked up on a couple of groups this week before we recorded this that Michael hasn't been too well. So hope he improves and get well soon to Michael. Next questions. I don't think it's too difficult. Why do you think Blake 7 has built up a cult following, Nick?
Well, obviously, you've been at that event in Stevenson recently. You see the demographic of the people that are there. They're people of our age generally, not exclusively, but mostly. And I don't know. I think it's people get that cozy feeling of going back to their childhood and reliving moments and programs, looking back on things like that when they were younger. And Blake Seven, it's a relatively unique program in its genre and ending that sticks in people's memories, I guess.
Yeah, Lynn, it's amazing, really. It has become a cult show.
It has, yes. For someone said 52 episodes, 40 plus years ago, on British TV. It was and small budget. Yes, I think it's so all the things I think that you said, Nick. Absolutely. I was interested at Steventon to see probably more slightly younger people who couldn't possibly have watched it on its first run were there as well, and I thought that was interesting. But I think the things we've talked about, the character development, the way the characters work together, has held in people's minds. The fact it stopped so suddenly. There was an extra year. It was intended to finish after series 3. That had a big, quite shocking ending, and then boy did they double down the next time. It's like it was the 21st of December, I think, isn't it? It's Gouda Prime Day, and the rest of my family, as you said, not so much with the spoilers, but the rest of my family were just utterly silent when it finished because they had no idea what to say to me. I think part of that, and that was it, and we were done. And it's just lived on. You talked about the audio recording. People just kept wanting more of it, and there was no more of it. Actually, there was nothing around that you could grasp onto, I think, for quite a long time. Even the 4 original videos took a long time to come out. It wasn't repeated, so maybe that had something to do with it as well. We had all loved it, but we couldn't revisit it for quite a long time. So it sits in your head, and when it did come back, I think it made it a little more special when you could see recordings. That's I think something that made a difference for me. And then the fact that everyone you can unashamedly love it. You can go to something like Seek, Locate, Celebrate and just be there and enjoy. I think other fandom can be pretty divisive. I don't see any of that in Blake Seven, and I think that helps it endure.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's one of those BBC classics. I'm currently rewatching Secret Army from around about the same period.
So am I.
Oh yeah. Well, I asked for the box set. It gets difficult, doesn't it, when you get older? What do you want for Christmas? So I ended up getting box sets of old programs. I haven't managed to work my way through Monkey Magic yet, but Secret Army is definitely something that I'm enjoying, and and because there's so much crossover between some of the actors from Blake Seven who would have cameo roles in Secret Army, it's great. But yeah, I think it's endured for exactly the same reasons. It's the characters, it's the actors, but I think most importantly, it's the fans. And I think we saw that in abundance in Steventon, that it's the passion of the Blake Seven fans out there. And I have never been to something, and I've, as a big football fan, Newcastle United fan, run a podcast. I, do events, and there's a lot of love in the room for the ex-players, but it's something completely different, a TV program, and having that. And I think my feeling about Blake Seven is it's just that it's the fans that have made it so important. And I think when you hear Matt Irvin and you hear the cast and some of the behind the scenes crew at a day like we went to, it's just so obvious. And the people who put those events together, deserve a lot of praise, a lot of credit. But it's the same people who 30, 40 years ago had set up Horizon Fan Club and were posting us out membership cards and sending us fanzines out. And it's those people who kept it alive. And it's probably a good time to mention the likes of, Cult Edge, who've given us some wonderful stuff, like the annual, and of course anyone who hasn't got this, the Blake Seven production diary series A. Jonathan Helm, who I stumbled across on X a couple of years ago, fantastic. you know, and these, you know, there's so much love and attention gone into these. That it's just an amazing thing to be part of. So if you haven't found Cult Edge, make sure you get onto Twitter, get onto Instagram, whatever social media you've got. They're on most platforms now. They've even started off the Blake 7 magazine again, which again is raising money for the Terence Higgins Trust. 100% fan made, 100% not for profit. But please get yourself onto that. But that is why I think it's the fans. You know, the program itself has stood proud, and it's stood a test of time. And hopefully, it sounds very promising, but it sounds like we might be not far away from the Blu-ray release.
I saw that as well. Yeah,
that was that, weren't they, at Stevenson?
Yes, and then I saw something else. I think it was Facebook this time, but someone saying they absolutely. Yeah, you always hear it, but I absolutely heard that this is coming. So it does feel like, as you say, that there have been rumors in the past, but it feels a little closer now, for sure.
The rumors of the Blu-ray have been greatly exaggerated. Let's hope not. Let's hope not.
Just as I thought, damn, yes, you're right. Missed that. Should have gone there.
Okay. Yep, as we go through these, you'll be beating me to them, Lynn, don't worry. What do you make of the Big Finish productions? Because we have been lucky in the last few years to have Big Finish coming up with some great storylines. Of course, they do Doctor Who, which is, you know, we all like Doctor Who as well. But the Blake 7 stuff was very special, and it did culminate in almost having everybody back for a particular storyline, which is fantastic. So have you enjoyed them, Lynn? Have you enjoyed them as much as you've enjoyed, you know, the enjoyed TV? Is it something you can get into, just having the audio and not the visual?
So the audio, not visual, as I say, isn't that's fine. I reveled in being able to re-listen, you know, whilst doing other stuff. I think it's that was all fine. I'm getting there now. I have struggled. It's interesting. And I've tried to work out why to actually to get into it. If I'm honest, I can see it's brilliant, as you say, having almost a full cast back at various times, having all those people together and being able to revisit. I look and go, that's a good idea. I have struggled to get into it. And I don't know why. Maybe it's a purist thing to say there are these 52 episodes and this is what I have loved. And then I see things developing and maybe they don't quite fit with my headcanon, and that's, you know, that's a different thing. But I've picked up a couple of things recently, and so I'm starting from the beginning actually of what they did and going to start working through it. So actually, as we talk over the next while, I'll have caught up with a few more, and I suspect it's, you know, ask me the question again in a few months' time, and we'll see how I'm doing, because I've struggled to get into it so far. And I see so many other people taking pleasure from it. I'm like, I must be missing something.
I can understand that. And because my answer is similar to yours, I'll let Nick go last on this. But I agree with you. I think it's I think mobile phones probably play a big part. I think if I'm gonna give them a go again. I enjoyed a couple of them. I didn't enjoy all of them. But I think I have too many distractions. And I'm like that sometimes if I'm sitting watching the TV, and if I don't get into something in the first 5 minutes, then I'll pick my phone up and look at a message. I think what I need to start doing is putting my mobile phone in a different room and sitting and watching something or listening to something. I've tried listening to some of them when I've been out and about, but then you get distracted. You know, you get distracted with messages, you know, coming through on your phone. So it's so difficult. But the some have been really good, really enjoyed them. Others I'm going to have to give them another listen, 100%. But I love the concept. I love the full cast one. That was great, and it's so different because obviously the actors are a lot older, but there's still signs of those old character traits. The script writing was good, but massive credit to Big Finish for what they've done, because you know they did manage to achieve the impossible, which was bringing the cast back. And reuniting them, and they managed to get Stephen Pacey on that as well, you know, which is fantastic. What about you, then, Nick? What's your thing?
I'd have to confess that I haven't listened to any of them.
All right, okay.
Hey. Yeah. No, seems this close, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, to an extent, oddly, I listen to the Big Finish podcast regularly, but they've got such an overwhelming catalogue of stuff that it's almost like I don't know where to start with it. So the only one I've ever purchased for them was like the backstory of Davros in Doctor Who, which was actually really good. But I haven't listened to any of the Blake Seven stuff whatsoever, though I would like to, but I've just never got round to looking for where it is and where to start. What's the earliest one? And because in my head, I've always got to start at the beginning and work my way through. And I've just never got round to looking at what the first thing is that they did and where to start. But I would be curious to do it. I have no feelings of being against it or anything. I'd be happy to explore it, but I just haven't got round to it.
The one to maybe start with, Nick, is that one. That's the one that I just listened to, and because you don't have to listen to them in a particular order. But this particular one has got Gareth Thomas as Blake, Paul Darrow as Avon, Michael Keaton as Villa, Sally is back as Jenna, Jan is there as Callie, and Brian Croucher plays Travis. And Alistair Locke, I've got to be honest, Alistair Locke has done brilliantly as Zen and Aurak. And he's superb. He really, really is. So if you want somewhere to start with Fractures, Nick.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that sounds a good recommendation and a good reason as well. So yeah, fair dues. I shall.
Yeah. Great. It is well worth a listen. And I didn't switch off in that at all. So we're coming towards the end of the podcast. It's flowing around that hour. So just want to ask you both, Nick, start with you on this one. Would you like to see a TV remake of Blake Seven? If not, would you like to see a movie? Or should they leave it alone?
Right, I would absolutely with the movie. I'd say no. I don't particularly know why, but it's like if you did a lot of movie adaptations of TV series don't work that well. You know, you could look at loads of things from the 70s, like Are You Being Served and Steptoe and Son, and they did loads of different TV shows like that went on to do a big screen version, and it just never quite replicated what you'd seen on the small screen. So for me, a film, no. A TV remake, I'd edge towards no, because I think it's best left alone. It's what we love, and if they did a new one, they could frankly mess it up, and it would be not quite the same. But that's not to say I wouldn't watch it if they did it. I'd still tune in and see what it's like. But it wouldn't disappoint me if they didn't. I'll put it that way.
Okay, Lynn.
So I think I'm with Nick on the film. It's no. Well, I'll leave it there. I think it's not that big scale thing. The TV adaptation, I feel if trying to remake what was there, right? So you can't recast this. You just can't. How could you recast Avon? I mean, I just don't feel. I couldn't watch something that was recasting each of those people on screen and go with that. There was discussion about making a kind of follow on, something that was taking place a certain time after, with characters who might be related or connected to in some way. So the Blake Seven universe, let's call it that. I could get on board with that. A Blake Seven universe, and goodness knows Terry created enough of them, right? We had almost different versions of the Blake Seven universe in almost every episode, but I could see you could pick up some of that, and that I would be interested in. But trying to simply remake what was there with the characters and recasting, no, for me.
No, I would agree as well. Film, no, I don't think it's a good idea at all. I would be interested in a TV series with regards to Blake Seven. Haven't seen the success of things such as, the franchise spin-offs from Star Trek. If you are going to go down that avenue of creating completely different characters on a similar spaceship. We could have a Liberator. There is another Liberator in a different time, which is containing characters doing a similar thing, and having those kind of moments where a Sally Nivette or a Stephen Pacey or a Jan Chappell appears as their characters from the original Blake 7 in a new role, or in maybe they flipped and turned. Jenna's part of the Federation now. Who knows? She's the new Servalan. But it becomes something like that. I think that would work, and I think with AI now as well. Of course, it would depend on the budget. But I think with AI technology now, we could have a few of our heroes returning in some way, shape, or form. It's possible with technology now to do it. We saw it with Star Wars. I don't think a BBC drama would get the same kind of budget thrown at it, but technology is so much different now than it was in the 70s and 80s. There is that opportunity to bring back Blake or bring back Avon or whatever, you know what I mean? And I almost think it gives us a chance to, because without spoilers, we have that opportunity to say this is what happened to our heroes. It would almost give a finality to it if it was on BBC and it was from the people who actually gave us the series. This is what happened on Gouda Prime. It would be interesting. I wouldn't be against it.
Look what they did with Harrison Ford, right? In the okay. On the one hand, the latest Indy is not the most shining example of what you should do with it, possibly. But as you say, the AI and so on, and the budget. But the universe, as you say, you could explore that universe a different way. There are other DSVs out there. I agree with that. That's an interesting one, actually.
Yeah. No, fantastic. Great stuff. Okay, well, that is the end of the introduction episode to the Word on Blake 7. Thoroughly enjoyed it. We are going to be reviewing the episodes, starting with the way back next week. We're not going to go from Series D. It would be an interesting way of doing it.
Backwards.
No one's ever done it backwards. I do want to give a special shout out to the other podcasts, because the other podcast is what influenced me to finally make the jump and try and do something like this. And in no particular order, Blake 7, the Mutoid podcast, Spaceball, a Blake 7 podcast. The two guys in Oz, I have no idea what happened to them, but they started off so well. They were big viewing for me, big listening for me in lockdown. Disappeared. I hope they're okay. But yeah, they just suddenly stopped. Straight Out of the Federation, another one, a Blake 7 podcast. Zenith, a Blake 7 podcast as well. And of course, Maximum Power, which is another one which I've got into, which is a completely different take on Blake 7, but one which makes you laugh. And we're lucky enough to meet everybody down at the convention from that podcast. But we kept the best to last. Blake 7 in character, absolutely superb that. Some great lads involved on that particular show. And as I say, we got to meet them at the convention as well. So if you like a Blake 7 podcast and you want to follow us, please do. But also give those other ones a follow and give them a listen. You've got hours and hours of fun listening to the other podcasts. And don't forget to give Cult Edge a follow on social media as well. But that is it, Nick. That is it. Lynn, thank you very much for joining us. And I'll see you for the next one when we will be reviewing The Way Back. But for now, we will play out with a little bit of this.